The lethal force of high explosives. The total annihilation wrought by the nuclear bomb. Deadly milestones in our 1,000-year quest to create ever bigger, more efficient bangs. But the bigger the bang, the harder it is to control. Scientists seek to get the balance right with the perfect fusion of destructive force, precision, and stability. Their mission takes us to the billionths of a second at the very heart of an explosion, and to some of the most volatile chemistry and extreme physics known to science. We witness what happens when terrorists hijack explosive power and glimpse a future that sounds more like science fiction than fact, where bizarre antimatter technology could deliver the biggest ever bang. But first, we must go back to basics to ask, what is an explosion? A chemical or nuclear reaction causes a fuel to suddenly and violently release energy. It expands rapidly and can produce immensely high temperatures. But all this takes place in just a fraction of a second. To understand what happens in that moment, we need to slow the process down and look into the heart of an explosion. And for that, we visit explosive expert Stephen Miller. Miller believes explosive science is best understood when taken out of the lab. Today, at his range deep in the English countryside, Miller is doing what he does best: blowing things up. He uses powerful explosives to demonstrate what it is that makes them so volatile and destructive. All explosive material burns very quickly, releasing huge masses of gas in a relatively short amount of time. During an explosion, that concentrated gas expands rapidly to fill the available space, then keeps on expanding. That ever-expanding gas cloud applies overwhelming pressure against anything caught in its way.
At the heart of an explosion, there is the rapid release of gas. It's this pushing on the local environment that destroys anything in its path. It could be cars, buildings, whatever.
This is the principle of all explosions, from the very large to the very small. All explosions require three elements: fuel, oxygen, and a means of ignition. To demonstrate what happens when these three things are brought together, Miller creates a controlled small explosion using baking flour as a fuel.
We have oxygen supply coming in through the tube here, fuel in front of it, and our ignition source. And what should happen is it should launch the tin up a few inches with lots of flames coming out.
Miller lets oxygen into the tin can. The flame ignites the flammable cloud of oxygen and flour. As the flame rapidly moves through the cloud, there is a sudden increase in pressure. The result? An explosion. But it takes a lot of energy and effort to make this relatively small bang. The proportions of oxygen and fuel must be perfect. Too little of either, and there will be no explosion. When it comes to waging war, soldiers need something more dependable. Gunpowder, the earliest recorded explosive, and the god of war for hundreds of years. Gunpowder brings together the fuel and the oxygen in one neat chemical package. This modern sample contains 75% potassium nitrate, containing the oxygen molecules, 10% sulfur, and 15% carbon, in this case, wood charcoal.
Charcoal is the fuel, the potassium nitrate provides the oxygen, and the sulfur just helps it burn a bit better.
Miller ignites the gunpowder.
Firing now.
The oxygen from the nitrate enables the sulfur and carbon to burn rapidly, forming a mixture of hot gases and a sharp increase in volume. Put gunpowder in a confined space, and the results are even more dramatic. Miller fills a bottle with ½ ounce of gunpowder and places it inside a wooden hut. When the gunpowder explodes, it will release heat and gas. These will build up, increasing the pressure inside the bottle. With nowhere else to go, the gases will expand outward, ripping the bottle apart. We know we can increase gunpowder's deadly force. Now, if we can direct that force, we can propel objects through the air. Objects such as bullets. Confine gunpowder within a metal barrel, add a projectile, and pull the trigger. The powder ignites. The barrel channels the expanding gases, which push the bullet faster than the speed of sound. Over centuries, this simple black powder shapes the course of history. But gunpowder is dirty. Smoke chokes the battlefield and fouls weapons after just a few firings.
Gunpowder is a perfectly good explosive. Unfortunately, gunpowder is also very dirty and burning. Up to 70% of the original mass is still left as solids in the smoke.
In the quest for an ever bigger bang, gunpowder is about to be joined by a new and terrifying explosive. This is trinitrotoluene, invented as the shadow of war looms across 19th century Europe. It's the world's first modern military explosive, and otherwise known as TNT. Unlike gunpowder, it's more than just a mixture of fuel and oxygen. TNT bonds those two essential components together within its molecules. It's a high explosive, which means the only way to release the explosive energy locked within is to shock it. And to do that, Miller must use a detonator.
With high explosives, we have the fuel and the oxidizer at the molecular level. When the detonator goes off, the shockwave from that breaks these bonds, releasing a massive amount of energy.
The elements nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen make up TNT. Hit these with a shock wave from a detonator, and the molecules rip apart. Miller triggers the detonator.
Stand by for firing. Firing now.
A series of tiny charges propels a shock wave into the TNT, which detonates at a rate of 22,000 feet per second, generating pressures of over 4,000 pounds per square inch. Oxygen atoms hit by the shock wave bond with carbon and hydrogen atoms. The nitrogen atoms are released as gas. In a fraction of a second, the solid TNT transforms into a cloud of gas. It expands outward in a powerful explosion.
As we saw on the high-speed camera, even at 1,000 pictures a second, it's very difficult to capture the moment of explosion with TNT. That's because it's going off at 20,000 feet per second.
TNT is faster, bigger, and more efficient than gunpowder. To demonstrate, Miller loads a shotgun with a specially designed cartridge containing TNT.
Stand by for firing. Firing now.
The molecular structure of the TNT rips apart so quickly that the steel barrel of the shotgun cannot contain it. The immense pressure of the expanding gas blows the chamber to smithereens.
And that's why you use a low explosive propellant instead of a high explosive in guns.
High explosives like TNT revolutionize the art of blowing things up. For centuries, scientists and soldiers have battled to control the lethal force of explosives, to balance power with stability. But they aren't the only people in search of a bigger bang, and some are less scrupulous. Now our journey takes us into a dark and dangerous world in which safety and stability matter less than maximum carnage. We're about to enter the world of terror. Tel Aviv, London, Baghdad. In today's world, the most destructive explosive device is often the crudest. Known as an IED, or improvised explosive device, such homemade bombs are the favorite weapon in the terrorists' arsenal. They're responsible for the majority of US deaths in Iraq. And it was an IED that caused the biggest domestic terrorist attack in the United States, Oklahoma City. IEDs are powerful, lethal, and dangerously unpredictable. The Energetic Materials Research and Testing Center in New Mexico. Its mission? To understand how these brutal devices work and stay one step ahead of the terrorists. And few people have a better understanding of IEDs than former bomb squad tech Jerry Little.
The term IED means improvised explosive devices. That is a device that has been constructed specifically for the purpose to kill. They are made by unconventional means, sometimes using conventional explosives, sometimes using improvised explosives.
The challenge for Little's experts is to understand how explosives behave from something that is more realistic than a Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah. People base what they know on explosions and explosives to what they've seen on television or it comes out of Hollywood, and that's not reality. However, when they come here, they truly learn, you know, what the full spectrum of hazards are and how they can protect themselves and the public.
At the test range, Little's team studies the type of homemade explosive devices that may threaten the US. And the best way to do it is to blow stuff up. Lots of stuff. 400 pounds of improvised explosive destroys a prefabricated building. A rudimentary letter bomb delivers some bad news.
It's missing most of the head, and both shoulders and arms are outside the door.
A pipe bomb annihilates a watermelon. The shrapnel spread by the blast lacerates the fruit, copying the effects of bomb fragmentation on human flesh. A wooden dummy wearing 3 pounds of plastic explosive detonates, replicating the carnage created by a suicide bomber. Today, it's the turn of this car. In the trunk, there is enough explosive to blow a building apart. The car bomb is the device of choice for terrorists both at home and abroad. Vice President of the facility and explosive expert Van Romero believes this type of study is critical for Homeland Security.
After the 9/11 event, the expertise that exists here came to the forefront. There was really something that we could do to help the country protect itself against terrorism.
The car bomb IED is made from ammonium nitrate, an agricultural fertilizer, and nitromethane, a highly volatile auto racing fuel. Shrapnel may blast thousands of feet, so everyone on the site must take shelter in a bunker 2,500 feet away. Mirrors allow